evening and welcome. As you can see, the set is a little different this evening. But despite that, the real talk I'm about to have with my guest will continue to prove to do what the show aims to do, which is to have soul-stirring conversations, to uplift, and to encourage. The word phenomenal means remarkable or exceptional. And when the word woman is used with it, what you have is an extraordinary woman. My guest is an extraordinary woman. She is beautiful inside and out. She is accomplished yet humble. She is funny yet serious. She is selfless, and she is filled with strength and determination, all while being a woman of God. My guest this evening is Paula Sanders Blackwell. Let me tell you about Paula. Paula is an energetic girl next door who loves to encourage women to fulfill their potential in Christ. Paula firmly believes in God's promise in Jeremiah 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans that I have for you." She desires to help Christian women believe that God has a plan for their lives. Paula is a gifted writer, educator, speaker, and worship leader, among other things. Paula is a woman passionate about education, faith, and prayer. She's a native of Birmingham, Alabama, and she and her husband, Riddell, live in Savannah, Georgia. Paula is the daughter of a former minister and nurse practitioner. She attended Oakland College, which later became a university, and she's the mother to twin daughters, Mariah and Maya. She's a happy stepmother to Tracy and Deshaun Blackwell, and is the Mimi to 3 beautiful kids, Kamel Blackwell, Elena Williams, and Maurice Morris. She received her master's degree from Walden University in education. Paula is a Harvard certified leader. She recently received her school leadership certification from Harvard School of Education. Currently, she's the principal of Breun Jr Academy in the beautiful Savannah, Georgia. She's also the professional development coordinator for the South Atlantic Conference. Paula loves to learn, and she's excited to be sharing her passion with us this evening. Welcome.
Man, I sound tired.
Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
To sit and have some real talk with me.
Absolutely.
In the introduction, you wear so many hats.
Yes.
You are, the principal of an academy, and you are an author. And let's talk about a little bit about those hats that you wear. How do you navigate your way through it all?
By God's grace.
Yes, yes.
It's a blessing to have a family that supports that. It's a blessing to have a school staff that also supports that. So it has made my life a little easier because they pour into me so that I can pour out. And it's also a blessing to have a husband that truly supports everything that I do. So God has been good to me.
That's good. Let's dive into the books that you have written. Okay. So you are the author of 4 books.
Yes.
And you've also co-authored some books.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the books. What inspired you, first of all, to write the books? And we're going to go through each book.
Okay.
So let's address the first book, which I love. Lessons from My Hard Head.
Yeah.
This book, a 52-week devotional book. And I read this book in one day. I had to call Paul and say, listen, this book, you took us on a journey. You took us on a relatable journey. And the vulnerability that you showed, talking about, going through your divorce and the the deep conversations that you had with God. Now tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book.
I'm not sure what inspired me initially, but I felt like it needed someplace, all the feelings I had needed someplace to go. And I felt like I wasn't the only person that had ever experienced some of the things that I talked about. But it was therapy. So I had originally started writing on Facebook. I would write every Friday, and so people started saying to me, you should put this in a devotional book. And I thought, okay. So after about 3 or 4 months, I decided, okay, I'm going to put this all in the devotional book. So I would write every Friday, and people would befriend me because people had shared what I had written. So it kind of developed itself, not something I planned on doing. Never thought I would be a devotional writer. But after we started talking about where I was in life, I was married at 22, married someone I had grew up with, and someone that I felt God had placed in my life to marry and spend the rest of my life with. We embarked on a marriage, had children. We were very active in our church, trying to keep, a roof over our heads. And then life just happened and things didn't work out the way I thought they would. And so I really started to write about what I felt like. And I, looked up and I was 39, 40 years old, going to be divorced. And I'm like, okay, Lord, how you let me end up like this? And the Lord said,
new journey.
Right. And I had to look back at the decisions that I had made. And that's a pretty tough conversation to have with God, but it's a conversation that I had to have. So I felt like what I was writing, other people had that same conversation with God. And when we're angry with God and we question God, and I've been told by people, you should never question God. And I thought, why not? Who else has the answers? So I started to question God.
That's what conversations are about, though.
Absolutely.
With God. Yeah.
So once we did that, it kind of evolved into that 52-week. And I thought, okay, part of it talks about how I got divorced, the recovery, and then toward the end it talks a little bit about how Riddell came back into my life, and then how that journey kind of went from there. So.
But you also talked about depression.
Yes.
And you also talked about your daughter's near suicide.
Yes.
In the book. Tell us a little bit about that. Was that hard for you to write about?
Actually, it was very hard to write about. More so because I wanted to make sure it was okay with her. And so we talked about, as a family, what that experience was for all of us, and the realities of what we still struggle with, and she still struggles with it. By God's grace, we continue working through it. We learned coping skills, but it was a very dark time in our family history. And so, and I reference our family is, my ex-husband is still a part of our family. He's just we just have a different kind of family.
And what was amazing to me was, like I mentioned before, your vulnerability in the book, because so many women go through it, feel the same thing, especially in the church, and keep quiet because of the stigma and the shame that's attached to becoming divorced or being divorced.
Oh, there's no shame in me. I refuse to be shamed.
Yes,
and,
So
and I never was treated that way. I'm very blessed that when I got divorced, I had a church family that was very opening, arms open. I think I made it kind of a joke a little bit for some time. I remember one time I went to a dinner and all the couples were there, and I was the only one who wasn't coupled up. And so they kind of looked at me, initially kind of funny, but I walked into the room, I said, I just want everybody to know I don't want your husband. I'm divorcing one. I don't want another one. And so they kind of laughed, and so they kind of cut the ice, and I think people just weren't sure what to say and what to say to me. And I said, listen, I'm the same Paula. I'm just a different phase of life. I'm the same person. So I think once you get past people trying to stumble over what they shouldn't say, I think it's all good. I thought, and nothing. I believe in humor, so I believe that kind of cut the ice, and we kind of went from there. And I never had another problem.
Wow. Well, the book is Lessons from My Hard Head, where she has some deep conversations with God and just takes you through her journey. It's worth reading. And let's talk about your 90-day prayer journal. She wrote a prayer journal, and it's a 90-day prayer journal. But in conjunction with this, you have a ministry called Recraft. So tell us about how this book came about, and tell us about Recraft and the purpose and the goal of Recraft.
So the 90-day prayer journal came about when I felt the need to go into deeper relationship with God. I had a group of girlfriends, and we had decided we were going to pray on a weekly basis. And so I thought, okay, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a way to write it out? And I went in the stores, and they had something. So I decided that I would, well, if they can do it, so can I. So I thought it'd be great to provide something for ladies to take time to look over their prayer journal and write in it. And then every 7 days, there's a checkpoint. And then every 14 days, there's another checkpoint. So you can look back and see what God has done. So that was the reason why we started that. Recraft came about because I believe that God recrafted my life. That means rebuild, reboot. I believe he recrafted Paula. And so I recrafted my relationship with God. And so I said to him, okay, I've obviously been a Seventh-day Adventist all my life. I've been a Christian. My daddy was a pastor. I went to church. I sang in the choir. How do I end up in this kind of predicament? And so I really recognized that I had lost my way in my prayer life with God. I was working for God, but I wouldn't have a relationship with him.
Very different.
So I started to realize that I needed to prioritize my prayer life. And so I started Recraft to teach other women how to prioritize their prayer life and how to focus on that prayers, the daily prayers. And not that you have to have, get on your knees every 5 minutes, but I would do a prayer every hour on the hour for a solid day. And I started intervening for other people initially. And so Recraft is the birth of that. So we are a prayer ministry. We're also a devotional ministry. We try to find ways to help women and men have the devotional time that they need and to build that devotional time. Initially, I had a lady who came to me and said, I've never had devotion before. And so we had a conversation as to why she had not had devotion. And she realized in our conversation, she'd never been taught. No one had ever taught her how to do devotion. So she said, I grew up in a church, but she had never had a daily worship. And to me, that was most important, is to really teach younger women how to have that daily relationship with God and have that conversation. It doesn't mean that you have to get on your knees and lay out to prostrate on the floor. It means you having conversations consistently with him all day long. And I'm like, okay, Lord, this child, oh Lord, this, and you have that conversation. And I can hear his voice. And I remember the first time I went to New York to have a book signing at a church there, a young lady said to me, I don't think I've ever heard God's voice. That blew me away. But I believed her because I said, when you don't study his word, you you can't recognize the voice.
There's no connection.
You just can't recognize it. So she said, she never put the two and two together. She said, I would hear my mother and my aunts and grandmother talk about hearing the voice of God. And I kept thinking to myself, what's wrong with me? But you're not spending time with him. If you don't spend time with him, then you're not going, even when he's talking to you, you're not going to recognize that he's talking to you because you don't know who he is. So that's part of the reason why Recraft is so important to me, is to teach young women and to teach women who are recrafting their life. I have a lot of women who are in their 40s like I was, and they found out they're empty nesters, and they look back and their husband says, oh, I don't want to be married anymore. What do you do? There's a prayer for that too. So that's the reason why I started Recraft. And the purpose of that is to just try to teach and educate women and men about the power of prayer.
And it's interesting because it all comes together. That's how you build, not just with conversation, but you build a friendship with God.
Amen.
You know, he's a friend, and
Absolutely.
he says it in his word.
Yes.
So by having that communication, just like it's required in daily friendships here on earth, and in our work, and you know, with family and friends.
Absolutely.
In order to build that friendship with him, we have to have that quality time.
And I think if we can teach young people that it's more about the relationship than the rules.
Absolutely.
I think that we would not have had such a loss of young people who are struggling. My daughter said to me, well, I believe this, I'm not sure I believe this. And I said, listen, as long as you believe in the Bible, as long as you believe in God and his word, and you have a relationship with him, everything else will come in
place. Okay, and there's another book. We don't have a copy here, but you did write a devotional for young adults.
I did.
Tell us about that one.
So I have two friends that are pastors, Pastor Philip Wesley. He's Dr. Wesley now. He co-wrote a book with me along with our friend Pastor Camone Hines, and it's for young adults, and each of us wrote 10, so it's a 30-day devotional. It's called Lessons for the Journey, and it combines lessons from our hard head, and Pastor Hines had a church that used to be called Journey, so we thought we would combine the names with the, and then Phil, he just kind of went on along with it. So the cover was, and I'll show you the cover another time, but the cover was picked by Phil. So we let him pick it since the names included ours. But it's a 30-day journal. Each of us wrote 10 days, just telling young people the importance of life lessons. And so there are a few lessons that we have learned. I'm hard-headed. I know other people who are hard-headed like me. So I wanted to kind of share some things that I have learned in hopes of saving some people a few hard heads and a few chap behinds, as I call them. You don't get your behind burnt like I did. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping that these lessons will be lessons that people will take from that and say, okay, Ms. Blackwell said, don't do that, so I'm not going to do that. So that's the reason for that. And then the other book is a Ruth book. It's a devotion, not a devotional, more so a Bible study on the study of life of Ruth, because I believe Ruth was the ultimate recrafter. I think she recrafted her life with Naomi and ended up with Boaz, but she wouldn't have done that had she not gone through that grieving process and put her foot on the path for a new life. So that's the reason why Ruth is so important to me.
Let's just go back to Recraft for a minute. In talking to you at one point, you told me about a young lady who you met, because Recraft has been to London, and you did a series there, and you shared a story with me about a young woman who had 15 miscarriages. Why don't you share with the viewers this woman's journey and this woman's story? And it just shows how impactful Recraft has been.
I was invited to come to London. This is before the pandemic. My girlfriend and I decided she would go with me because I wanted to be able to put my hands on people. And so every time we go and do Recraft, it's always important for me to sit and talk to people. So this particular weekend, I flew to London, and they had an event on that Sabbath, and every woman wanted me to pray with them after. So I stood in line, and I must have prayed with 55 women that day. The very last young lady who came up, she said, may I hug you? And I said, oh, sure. You know, I'm a hugger. So I hugged her, and she said, I just have to share with you. She heard my testimony with divorcing and rebuilding my life and how God was working through my life. And she said, you know, I'm in the process of divorce. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry you have to go through this. And so she explained to me that she had moved from London to Nigeria with her husband, and he was abusive to her, and his family was putting a lot of pressure on her to have babies, and so she kept trying, and by the 15th miscarriage, her mother was like, listen, you need to stop doing this. But she wanted to have a baby and just was insistent on trying to have a baby for her husband and his family. And I get the culture about that. Unfortunately, her body was just not in a way that was able to produce a child. She was broken. That's what came across to me.
That's a lot of
She literally cried in my arms. And that really resonated me. Her pain and her heartbreak is something that I will never forget. But she said to me, I have hope that the Lord is going to restore me someday. Now, I didn't update the story because I spoke to a lady who said she's doing very well. She's back in London with her family, and I praise God for that. But what moved me about her story is that she insisted on doing something that God was telling her was not to do. And she kept trying and kept trying. And I said, well, why didn't you stop after 5? Because, listen, I would have been done after 2. I'd be like, okay, that's a wrap. Clearly, this is not for me. But she said, I felt guilty. And because I felt like I should be able to do this. And unfortunately, there are millions of women in the world who may never have children naturally. And I said to her, there are babies that need mamas. And there is a baby for you if you want to find one. There are millions of children that you could adopt or foster. And she said, I never even thought of that. But when we get on this, the devil puts us on this spin that believing that this is what our will is, not God's will, but our will. Then she kept on that merry-go-round. But eventually she had to come off that merry-go-round and realize, okay, maybe this is not what God wants me to do. This may not be your calling. As a kid said, this may not be your ministry. So this is something that she had to come to grips with. And so I just continued to pray for her. She texts me every now and again on Instagram, and I'm so excited to see her developing her own life and becoming the woman that God wants her to be. And maybe someday she will have a baby. Maybe someday she'll adopt. But that's in God's time, not yours.
And like the title of the book, Lessons from My Hard Head. I mean, the devil just takes us on this journey where we make our own decisions and we go against God's will. That she was so broken by the time she approached you. It was time to stop. It was time to think of it differently and think of another way. Currently the teacher of Sejour Jr. Academy.
Yes.
Okay. Needed to make sure I got that right. I want my head on a chopping block. But you used to work in the public school system.
I did for 20 years.
For 20 years as a teacher. And now here you are as both teacher and principal. So tell us about this journey of your teaching where you are now a principal of a school.
So I got into education initially. Let me back up for a minute. I was a VB programmer in a former life. And so I had twins. And after my daughters got a little older, I said, I want to be home with my kids during the summer. So obviously, that led to education. So I decided to start teaching at the Breun Jr. Academy in Atlanta. I started part-time. And then I decided, okay, well, I'll just go to public school during the following year. So the following year, I went to public school, and I was an assistant teacher first. I taught first grade. And previous life, I had taught kindergarten. So I knew what teaching was about. So I knew it was hard work. But I loved the kids and loved seeing their little eyes light up when they learned something new. So I did that for a couple years. And then I shifted over and got my master's degree and went to instructional technology. And then I went to be a media specialist. So I was a school librarian for a number of years. And so got divorced and moved to Houston. And then I still was a school librarian. And then I transitioned into being what they call a specialist teacher, a technology teacher. So then I taught photography and videography and
you have some skills.
Oh yeah. And I became that for several years, and then when my husband's father started getting up in age, and we noticed that he was starting to get up in age, we said, maybe we need to come a little closer. Houston was a long way from my parents are in Birmingham, Alabama, and my husband's family at the time was in Greensboro. His daughter and son are still there, but his father is deceased now, but he was still living at that time in Greensboro, Burlington area. So we thought, well, okay, we'll come back a little closer to Georgia. And so I called the superintendent for South Atlantic, and I said, hey, I'd like to come back. Do y'all have any jobs available? She said, I was thinking we would get somewhere in the Charlotte area, because initially with Dell and I said, if we move to Charlotte, we'll be close enough to the kids, but close enough to my family, so that we could, kind of do in between those. So she said no. I was like, okay, well. She said, I have something in Fayetteville, North Carolina, though. And my husband was like, absolutely not. Because he had been in the military, and so he had lived in there. He didn't like the city, so he was like, no. So I said, okay, well, no, that's not going to work, but thank you anyway. So I applied for my North Carolina license like a month before this conversation. And so when Ms. Gator called me back, she said, but I do have a job down in Savannah, Georgia for a teaching principal. And I said, what is that? And she explained that I would be the principal, but I also would teach. I said, oh, y'all trying to get 2 out of 1. That's what y'all are doing. So she said, it is a hard job, but I think you can do it. So we prayed about it, and I called her back, and I said, okay. So then she said, okay, you'll have to go through the interview process, and they'll have to vet you and all that kind of stuff. I said, okay. So we went through that whole process. I got like 3 interviews, and then finally they called me back and said, yes, we'd like you to move to Savannah. So we left Houston after being there I had been there 5 years, but Dell had been there 7 years, and then we relocated to Savannah. So it's been an interesting journey. Public school has been an eye-opening experience for me. I was very sheltered as a child. My parents have been married 55 years. I'd never seen my father say a cross word to my mother. I've seen them talk about money and, what we're going to do about whatever, but never seen a cross word of anger, I said, at them. So it was an eye-opening experience to work for Atlanta Public Schools and see parents come to school and fight children. I was like, what is this?
And teachers.
Teachers. And to fight each other.
Right. Right.
And so I remember the first week I had a parent come up to the school, and they were arguing. 2 parents were arguing. I guess they were married. They literally fought like cats and dogs right there in front of the kids.
Wow.
And I was like, I called my dad. I was like, I want to thank you for protecting me from the world that is mad. I just had never seen anything like that. But I got an education in Atlanta Public Schools. Like, no, listen, they educated them kids, but they educated me too. Because I had never seen anything like that. And so, you see the poverty, you see I lost a kid my second year. We had a young man that he would get suspended. He never went to class, and he was smoking outside the door. He was smoking weed outside the door. My principal at the time was 4 foot 11. She was running behind him, trying to keep him in class. And so for the first part of the semester, his mom kept saying, oh, y'all don't like my child. Oh, y'all just being mean to my child. And then, we like, your child does not follow instructions. He wouldn't do any work. He wouldn't do what he was supposed to, over and over again. And then during spring break, he went to his uncle's house, playing with a gun, and shot himself in front of his 5 friends. And so I went to the funeral because I just wanted to see her to see us and see that we were there to support her, regardless of what she thought of us. And so that really broke my heart and really put me on a different trajectory in terms of education, because I was like, okay, we can't keep losing kids like this. And so I tell my kids that story every year. I always get the beginning of the year, I always go through the rules of engagement. I always tell kids, life decisions can change in a moment.
Absolutely.
And so when you make a decision that is not in your best interest, in a moment it can change your life.
Absolutely.
And so that's been my message to all my students. And so I've been blessed to have some good kids, and I've not some not so good kids too. And some of their mamas been, come up to the school and they'll be ready to fight you, but the reality is you care about their kid. And so when they see that you care, I had a little boy in Atlanta Public School who he came into the cafeteria and he cussed at me. He called me a bad word. And I was like,
Wow.
You're not finna eat no Fruit Loops in this camp and cuss at me. So I took his food and threw it in the trash. And I said, every day you come here, you're going to apologize or you're going to eat them Fruit Loops at home.
Wow.
So about the third or fourth day, he was hungry. And he came back looking like, trying to see if I was in there. I said, I see you. And so he ran back out. And then by the fourth day, he was really hungry. And so he told his mama, I haven't been able to eat breakfast. And his mother's like, why are you not eating breakfast? That lady won't let me eat breakfast. But he didn't tell her why. She came up to the school and she called the principal. That woman won't let my child eat his breakfast. Da, 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 da. So I went down there and my principal said, Miss Paula, did you throw away his breakfast? I said, I did. She said, how many times did you throw his breakfast away? Every day. And my principal was looking like, I said, did he tell you why I threw away his breakfast? She said, well, no. And so I said, and I repeated what he said, and his head dropped, and he said, and the mama said, you did what? Pow! She knocked him across that room. And he never, ever said another word to me after that. He just waved. Hey. But he thought that he was getting away with it. And his mother was like, he better not say one word. You better not call her out of her name again. And he never did.
Wow.
But from that point on, he would wave. He didn't say nothing. He ate them Fruit Loops and kept moving. But my principal was like, why would he call you that? I said, I don't know. I didn't know what happened the first time. I said to him, hey, son, you need to sit down and be quiet, eat your breakfast so you can get moving. No, he he just popped off. And I wasn't sure why. Because I never had a problem with the kid. But his mom was like, oh, no, you're not going to have that. So that just gives to show you, until you stand up to a child and say, listen, I love you, but you got to respect me too. So that was one of the lessons that he learned. But but Atlanta Public Schools educated me. Let me tell you, I learned a whole lot of stuff from them folks.
So what is it like with being the principal now? I mean, personally I know that you're very hands-on. You're very hands-on, not just with the school work, the school activities, but with the students and the parents. So tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, that's probably what's making me so tired. I believe that we are co-parenting. And so
that's a good way of putting it.
I tell parents all the time, you're the mom at home, but I'm the mom at school. So if you have that mentality and that mindset, then we are co-parenting. And so we are partnering to raise your child.
The same goal.
And so our ultimate goal is, one, that he make it to heaven, and two, that he shine while he's on this earth. And that's our mission, really. Our mission at the school is to train the heart, the head, and the hands. And so we believe that in helping the whole total child. But we need help from parents to do that. So I've been blessed to have some good parents. Now, is everybody great? No.
Of course.
But we do have the core of my parents are supportive. And whatever I say, they say, listen to Blackwell, if that's what you say we need to do, that's what we need to do. And so it's overwhelming sometimes. It does take up a lot of my time. I will admit that. I'm trying to learn how to balance time better. I don't always do that well. My husband has to remind me, this is Riddell's night. Put the phone down. It's my time. So I had to adhere to that too. But it is something that I believe passionate about. I believe students can achieve when they are given love, support, and the core of education that we have given. And I believe Christian education is important. And our community here in Savannah has embraced Rhema. We are 109 years old, going into our 110th year. And so the blessing is the school has a great reputation in the community already. So all I really needed to do was to polish up the reputation that we had. Because at one time the school had fallen down in enrollment, but now we're moving back the other direction. And God has truly blessed us. We've gotten a great deal of support for the community as well as the church, and the pastoral staff at our church at West Broad has helped bring about a change in our community. And so I believe that there are good things that are in store for Rhema and their students. We graduated, the first year we graduated through COVID. Last year we decided to take our graduation outside so that more parents could come, more family could come, because we would have to limit if they came into the church. And this year the kids said, even though it's not as much COVID, we still want to have it outside. So I was like, okay, so that's what we're doing. But God has blessed Rhema, and we've got some great staff and faculty. It was, I was new, I didn't know anybody here, so it's been a couple of years of building a team, and it doesn't always,
and
you know,
relationships.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've gotten vendors now. I know who these people are. They're, you know, loyal to our school. If I call, they come. So that's been a blessing to us as well. And our school board has been a blessing to us. We have a tremendous school board president that has helped us tremendously. I think that's been the biggest blessing, is having the folks come on board and say, listen, let's reach in here and just try to get it done. And so you don't have the egos, you don't have, it's about me, it's really about the core of the kids and really making sure our kids have the best. And I'm excited. Last year we got a $23,000 donation where we became an official Apple school. So our students have 6th, 7th, 8th grade had the MacBook. Our kids who are in K through 5 are iPad kids, and so every child gets an iPad, and the parents get to buy them and keep them, so that's a blessing for them as well. And so the school is growing. We're a Google school. We use Google Classroom. So if we need to be virtual, we can be virtual.
And that was going to be my next question. I'm curious to know how the pandemic affected the learning process at your school, because it affected everything in all the schools. So how was that experience?
See, the blessing for us is we live in a coastal city. So when I first moved here in July of 2019, in September we had a hurricane, and the hurricane came through. And so about a month before, I had Miss Stokes, who is one of the safety persons for our school. She said, well, you know, it's hurricane season. You need to get your hurricane stuff together. And I thought, okay. And I had come from a coastal city, from Houston, so I remember that, and that resonated with me. So I said to the staff before school started, I said, I think we need to go to Google Classroom. I think that will help our students in case we ever have to go virtual. We will already be there. Prepared. So thank God he placed that vision in me to do that. So our kids were virtual, even though we were in the classroom. They were still using the Google Classroom for instruction. So when the pandemic happened, and I remember that Friday we were supposed to be in Atlanta for an event for the conference, and they called us on Thursday and said, listen, they're going to shut down. We're not going to be able to come. So we were praying, and so then our superintendent made the decision, we're going to cancel this and we're going to go virtual for school. Well, we were due to have spring break the following week. So we decided to go to spring break early and let all the kids stay home for a couple days. And during that time, we had 2 teachers. We were all new to the school, but one of our teachers was a seasoned teacher, and she said, listen, I've never taught virtual. I don't know what that entails. So she came to my house, and for 3 days we taught so we could figure out how to get her classroom online. So that helped us to be able to give us additional time to do that. And so for her, she was doing K through 2, so we sat down and created her virtual classroom and worked through the stuff so that she would be able to do it with ease, because she was not tech savvy like that. So she just said, listen, I'm going to do the best I can. And by God's grace, we were able to get through. We came back from spring break, and boom, we were ready to go. It took us a couple weeks Zoom was new to the kids. I had to call a few houses and wake some folks up out of the bed. People come to school, we had to get the rules and regulations. You can't sit and eat during the middle of class. If you need to get up, we had to come up with all the rules and regulations for what an online classroom.
Order and discipline.
Right. We had kids come up, they in bed. Oh, baby, no, you need to put the pillow down, get to a desk, and I would call the mama. I need them at a desk. I need them some paper and pencil. Get out of the pajamas. We had one kid was running around. He didn't realize the camera was on. He run around the house with his underwear on. The other kids are laughing. What is he doing? It was hilarious for the first couple of days, and then after that it got old. But overall, the kids really transition well. Do we like virtual school? Miss Blackwell hates virtual school.
I'm sure.
But we made it work, and the kids. They got accustomed to it. And the kids even ask me for it now. Miss Blackwell, can we have virtual school? No, I'm not doing virtual school. But we know if we need it, it's there. And because we use the Google Classroom, we've used it now 3 years. This is our 3rd year. We are familiar with it. We can do Google Classroom. We have tutors that come in. We taught French online. We've done just about everything online. So we do some of our home and school meetings are still online, and we have our honors program coming up. It's still on Zoom as well. We just have adopted it so that we have more involvement from the parents and families.
Nice. And let's talk a little bit about your teachers, because you yourself, teaching is a hard job. Underpaid. Underpaid profession. How do you keep your teachers motivated?
Well, I think you have to have a team mentality. I believe in team mentality. There's no other way to do it. So it helps that we all are in it together, and we all feed off of each other. I don't make decisions by myself. I always ask them. I was like, well, what do y'all think we should do? And we all discuss it, and we make a decision. So there's not Miss Blackwell made a decision. It's we made a decision. So it helps to keep us motivated, because we know that we have a buy-in. And so when people buy into the vision of, okay, this is what I see, what do y'all think? And they say, yeah, I think you need to add this and this. And then we kind of mesh it together. I think the blessing is we've had a really good team. Now, we're not perfect. And do we have communication foes? Sometimes we do. But I think at the core, we believe in sitting down, having the tough conversations, and having the heavy lifting conversations, as my superintendent calls it, and really bringing about what we feel we need to move forward. And it doesn't help that I feed them all the time. We had Teacher Appreciation Week, and they fed us all week. We give good gifts. I feed them at Christmas. We do all those stuff. But I think you really have to show people you care. The second year we were here, Mr. Mitchell, one of our teachers, he got COVID. And so he's told his testimony, otherwise I wouldn't share that. But he and his wife and his kids all had it. And so he was in ICU for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks. And he was in the hospital for 2 months. So during that time, I'm scrambling trying to get food to his wife so that she doesn't have to cook, because she's sick too, with 3 kids who running around the house who ain't nothing wrong with them, even though they're positive. There was nothing wrong with them. So we're, as a school, we pulled together and made sure she had food and checking on him, and so it I think that kind of made us. It really made us come together, and I think that time really gelled us as a family. Because we're like, listen, and I told the Lord, I said, listen, I ain't never begged for somebody's life like I begged for his. I was like, Lord, please restore this man. And he came back second semester stronger, and has been a blessing to us. And so I know that God answers our prayers. I know that he heard our prayers during that time. And it was just a blessing. My secretary, Terry, and I she literally came in and said, they're putting him in ICU, and we literally stopped and cried in the whole classroom. And all the kids could see us cry. But the kids knew we were praying every day for Mr. Mitchell, and their prayers were answered for him as well. So it's just been a blessing. And even though COVID has been around, I didn't get COVID. My secretary even got it. Some of the other folks got it, but 2 of the teachers, they didn't get it. Mr. Mitchell was the only teacher of us that got it. And a couple of the kids got it, but God has just protected us, because the one kid who got it, he got it from his parent, and his parent had come from out of town. They never came to school. So that's how you know God kept protecting us. So it was just a blessing. I mean, it was just a blessing.
Wow. Yeah, everyone was impacted everywhere.
Yes.
But it's good that you could have navigated through it and around it, and that the kids were still able to learn and function, because you're so on top of it. Principal Blackwell.
Well, we had those masks, and those masks kept us going for a while. So we praise God that we were able to come through, and He's continued to bless us.
Good. Just sidetrack a little bit. So we talked earlier in the introduction where you mentioned your husband Riddell sometimes have to remind you that it's his day. How do you shut down and shut off after coming home from school? And how do you balance work and family?
I'm not so sure I'm doing that very well.
Yeah.
To be honest, I try to turn my phone off. Well, my phone automatically turns off at 9 o'clock. So I've made it a habit of doing Paula from 9 o'clock on.
Okay. Wellness.
Sometimes, there are days that I sit in the bathroom and just sit in quiet, and I don't need any music. I don't need anything. I just sit in my own silence. I've started doing a nighttime routine of just shutting off everything. I'll shut off the phone, I'll shut off the TV, and I'll just sit there for a few minutes. And usually Riddell will fall off to sleep, or I'll fall off to sleep. But I started getting up early in the morning as well. And so I get up early and I have worship by myself. And then sometimes, I have a prayer group every morning. That helps me stay centered, I believe. But I think most of the time it's just really centering that time early in the morning, and balancing that time for God, and really sitting with my thoughts and sitting with His thoughts for my day. My mother is a workaholic. That's something I earned. So I have to be forced on vacation. I've learned that when I go on vacations, I need to go somewhere. So
away.
Because if I sit home, I'm thinking about all the things I need to be doing. So I've kind of forced myself into planning things to do on my vacation, so that I'm away from the work and away from everything else. 2 Saturdays a month, I stay home in bed. I've made a mandate to do that. I made a commitment to my church that I would be there first Sabbath of every month, and then I'll choose one other Sabbath. But 2 Sabbaths a month, I stay home and rest, and I read the Bible, or listen to things that I want to listen to music, or hear some other book, read some devotional that I haven't read.
Sabbath rest.
I just try to do that Sabbath rest, and I've done much better this year than I did in the years past. But I had to force myself. When we were COVID, it was easy to do. But what COVID taught me is that I needed to force myself to do it. So I learned some COVID lessons.
Slowed you down.
It really did slow me down. So my Sabbaths, I would sit here and I would just rest, and I would get up and go walking around my neighborhood. I'd talk to my neighbor, things that I didn't have time to do. And so I recognized that I needed that time. So I forced myself. I told my pastor, I was like, he's like, "You're not coming to church every Sabbath?" Nope. I'll be there 2 Sabbaths a month, the rest of the 2. If there's 5, the rest of the 3. I'll be home. Because I needed the time to rest. It's just the time that I need to be able to reset my body and my mind and my spirit. And so I need that time. And so it's time that Riddell and I we don't have to get up and go rushing out the door like I do tomorrow. Just to give that time and pour into us and be able to do that. And so that's been a blessing for me. And I try to, I have 2 daughters, and my daughters and I, we have a family chat every night.
Oh, nice.
And my dad is in it sometimes. My mom is in it. My sister is in it. COVID forced us to do that because we couldn't see each other.
Right.
And there was a whole year. I have never in my life not seen my daddy in like a year. That's never happened.
Yeah.
So my grandfather is still living. He's 103. And so I'm going to take some time during the summer and go visit with him. But these are moments that you just never will get back. So I really have started to understand, okay, I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah.
I need to value the people. And when I turned 50, all my girlfriends came to Houston and we hung out at the beach for a couple of days. And those are moments that you remember. I'm glad the kids who will remember me as teacher, and this has been Teacher Appreciation Week, when by the time people see it, this will have been over. But one of my students said to me, "Thank you for believing me when I didn't believe in myself."
Wow.
That really,
Yes.
got me thinking. I
That's
said,
what
you know
it's
what?
about.
It
That's
really
what-
is.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really what it's
Yeah.
about. And
Yeah.
I see such great potential. I had a student this week that I told him he wasn't going to graduate if he didn't get these math scores up. And I told his parents that about 6 weeks ago. So we've been working at trying to get his math scores up. And the mother called me. She had let him go play basketball. He was supposed to be tutoring. And school is paying for the tutor. And so I called her. I said, "Listen, baby, I need that boy in a classroom, not in a basketball gym." And she was like, "Oh, Miss Blackwell, he just wanted to go." I'm like, "No, he needs to be."
Yeah.
You cannot put a child who has a deficiency in math, who already has focus problems in a gym, and expect him to be able to do math.
Yeah.
No, he needs to be home. So I fussed at the mama and I fussed at the kid. Then yesterday he retook his test, came up 300 points.
Oh wow.
And so I called the mother and I
push,
she said, "I'm just so tired." And I understood her pain. But I said, "Listen, I need you to let me be mama for the next 2 weeks. What I say goes." She said, "Yes, ma'am." So I'm his mama for the next 2 weeks. And I just want her to help him so he can finish the strong.
Yes.
So that's the
bring
goal.
out his full potential. Too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I said, now if he plays basketball later in life, I'm happy for that. But he's gonna have somebody in their head of his too.
Yeah.
So that's what my goal is, to help him balance all of that in his life.
Yeah, that's amazing. I said to you some time ago, one of the things that I admire about you is that you don't do things haphazardly. I don't know if you recall me saying that to you. You put your all into everything that you do, including, yes, being a teacher, a principal, but even your friendships. You are not haphazard. I don't know where you find the energy or even squeezing the time, but you give so much of yourself selflessly. How?
I think because I believe that friendships and relationships are so important in our lives. And I've known my best friend, besides you, my other best friend. I have a girlfriend that I have been friends with since we were in the first grade. That, to me, that relationship is just as important as your relationship with me, and my relationship with you. I believe in pouring into people because I believe God is going to bless our friendship and our relationship to be a blessing not only to you but to me as well. So it's always been important to me to have that good group of women friends that I just believe are my sisters.
And I recall what you said to me when I said that. You said, God is not haphazard.
No.
He doesn't give anything haphazardly.
That's the truth.
And you model him. You try to model him. So that is something that I really, really admire about you.
I think, it's important that people know that you are important in their lives. I remember years ago when Whitley Phipps said to me, "You go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated." And so,
deep.
And I thought he had said it
That's
until
deep.
I went and Googled it and realized he didn't.
That's deep.
But it was deep. But he said to me,
yeah.
you have to be with people who celebrate you
Yeah.
and who uplift you. And I thought, man, that is deep. But it was so important for me to find my tribe. And so every place I've lived, the blessing is, as a pastor's daughter, we moved every 4 or 5 years, but I've always found a tribe of friends. And I forget whose tribe don't know the other. Because I've been to so many places. I'm like, don't you know? They're like, no. I'm like, oh. But I've lived in so many places that I think they know each other, and they don't. But
or tribes have some
people,
mutual friends.
Right. And people always say to me, Paula, you know everybody. It's not that. It's because, one, I went to Oakland University. And two, I was a pastor's daughter who moved around all the time. So I got to know people, and whether it be high school or college or doing various things. I used to have an organization called UCAA that we did music conferences across the city. That was going to
be my next thing to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I missed the UCAA.
Miss Concert Promoter.
Oh yeah, I used to love that. I had a ball meeting some of the great gospel singers. I never forget meeting Donna McClurkin. That was a blessing for me. We had a great time with UCAA. And United Christian Arts Association was an organization that I started primarily so that those were people in the church would have a place to go to educate themselves. So I've always been in education, regardless of what genre it was. But I love music. I've always sung. And I always thought that it'd be great for us to have a place to come once a year to, fortify ourselves and shore up our ministries. So we used to have a music conference. We had it in Baltimore. We had it in Atlanta, in Nashville. We brought the brightest in our organization to talk about praise and worship, about pastoral leadership as well, and choirs. And we always had a good time with the concerts. And so it was a blessing for me to be able to do it. I learned a lot about music ministry. I learned a lot about the industry of gospel music. Some good, some not so good. But I learned a lot about how it works. And so when I went to Houston, I was the church event coordinator. We used to have a concert probably twice a year. So I met several artists that would come to Houston and really enjoyed that process. But music ministry is really, my mom sings and plays the piano. She taught us to sing. I play piano. Don't tell nobody.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I know you sing very well.
Play in church.
Okay.
But I
she
do.
Plays the piano.
Yeah, like a good PK, we learned how to do something. So my sister my dad bought my sister a guitar, and I had the piano. She don't play the piano. I don't play the piano. She don't play the guitar. But those are just some of the things that we learned along the journey of life. But yeah.
And you also had a TV channel with Comcast back in the day. Tell us about that.
Now this is
how long? Yeah.
I did it for about 2 years. It was a video demand channel. At that time, video demand, who knew what that was? Now it's like the rave. I mean, it was a streaming service.
Yeah.
So that's what it was, and we didn't know I didn't even know what streaming service was back then. But we started a channel so that we would have our music ministry. I'd liked to have something other than 3ABN. No offense to 3ABN. But we wanted something where we would recognize our music. We would recognize ourselves there. So we started our faith channel, and we ran it for 2 years. And I sold my time out to another church who took it over. But we had a great opportunity there to really put our ministries out there. It was so new, and the reason why I don't think it went as long as it did is because people didn't know what video on demand was at the time. People weren't thinking streaming services at the time. People were thinking, we're going to go to the computer and stream our service, not watch it on TV. So now it'd be, commonplace. But overall, I think it's a different lifestyle now.
Wow.
Just different.
Wow, how it all evolved.
Absolutely.
How it all evolved. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm just going to ask you some fun questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I think doing professional development is where I'm going to probably end up.
Okay.
I love helping teachers work smarter and not harder.
That's my motto. Okay. All right. So that's a goal. That's a goal to accomplish.
Yeah.
And you just finished school with something else. What was that?
I went to Harvard to do the Certified Leadership Program. So I finished that. I started a program at South College here recently. That's my doctorate. So I got about 9 more classes to take.
Nice. Where do you find the time? But nice.
I don't know.
So this is a question that I always ask a guest before we close. Are you living your purpose?
Absolutely. I believe God made me to be an educator, whether it be in a classroom or on stage or in the community. I believe that I'm an educator, and I believe that God made me to help provide an education to people. That's been my ministry. That's been my purpose. That's been my passion. So I believe that I'm living what He asked me to do.
Amen. That's great. So as we prepare to close, I would just like it for you to look into the camera and just give a word of encouragement to women, men alike, everyone, especially those who are recrafting their lives. If you can just give some words of encouragement.
Absolutely. I believe in Philippians 4:13. I can do all things with Christ who strengthens me. So I believe that as we make our way through this journey of life, there's nothing you can't do with God's help. With God's help, all things are possible. And I believe that.
Amen. Well, Paula, this was amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your extremely packed and busy schedule to have some real talk with me.
Absolutely.
My prayer for you is that God will continue to bless you and just fill you up as you pour into others. I pray that He will do the same and pour into you with your ministry and as you continue to selflessly give of yourself.
Thank you.
I do appreciate you and I love you.
I love you more.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And to your viewers, thank you so much for watching. If you have a guest that you'd like to see on the show, feel free to contact us at realtalkwithmichelle1@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us at Ambassador SDA. I do pray that this conversation with my guest tonight was a blessing to your soul. Thank you for watching, and until next time, let's have some real talk.